at the forefront of politics.
Our enemy is Trump. He is the enemy. We got to unite. If we're not a united party, we lose to Trump.
On the front lines of activism.
There's certain fights, if we don't engage, they win. This is a fundamental question of who we are.
And delivering your daily dose of comedy.
Donald Trump, when he had his physical, they had his blood pressure, and mine is higher than his. Oh. And the irony is mine is higher because of him.
From the blue wave.
We flipped enough seats to take control of the House. We control the House.
To 2020 and beyond. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters. Tuesday, January 14th. I'm Dean Obeidallah. As always, hoping to be your MBFF. I'm here all the time, like the Dark Knight, watching everything. I'm on Twitter at Dean Obeidallah, dean@deanofradio.com. So, big news today, and it'll be confirmed tomorrow, assuming the vote happens in the House. The impeachment removal trial of Donald Trump is going to begin a week from today, folks. Set your alarms, your calendars. Donald Trump is just 67 votes away from being an ex-president. That's it. In reality, he is 20 Republican votes away from gone. Bye-bye, Trump. How great would that be, folks? Come on. I know I say I always want us to be the ones to defeat him in November, and I do. But how much better would it be for the country? How much better would it be for all of us? How much better would it be for me? I could sleep better. Just think of me for a second, Republican senators. But that's a long haul. Tough to get the actual Donald Trump to be removed by 20 Republican senators. There's not enough Republicans in the Senate to put America first. They put Trump first, most of them, but a few might not. We're going to talk about in detail today, because we are going to have a trial next week, exactly what you can expect in this trial. In the third hour, Danny Savalas will be here. We'll do a deep dive on it. But I'll give you some of the top lines and also make an argument why you need to have witnesses. This is not a trial without witnesses. It is a cover-up. Trials have witnesses. Trials are a search for the truth. We all know that. Judge Judy has witnesses. The People's Court has witnesses. Divorce Court has witnesses. Cover-ups have nothing. But quick daily reminder, and I've been saying this over and over at different times on this show to remind people, and I'm going to say it even more, that Donald Trump is trying to lie now about a fundamental issue. Again today, Donald Trump saying he's going to save coverage for pre-existing medical conditions and somehow even suggesting he's the one that gave us that coverage. That's a lie. We never had coverage for pre-existing medical conditions until 2010. What happened then? The ACA, Obamacare, passed. How many Republicans supported it? Zero. Now they're gonna wear that around their neck because they're always like, no Republican voted for Obamacare. That means not one Republican voted to ensure that you and your family have coverage for pre-existing medical conditions. And since then, they voted over 50 times when they controlled the House to repeal it. Repeal. That's what Trump ran on and tried to do it. And if it wasn't for John McCain putting his thumbs down, and we famously in the Senate voting thumb down against the repeal, there would be no more requirement that insurers covered pre-existing medical conditions. And since then, what did Trump do? Him and the GOP ended the individual mandate of the ACA, and they were warned when they did it. If you do this, you're going to undermine the entire scheme of the ACA, and it might be held invalid by a court. They said, nope, we're going to do it. And guess what? A court has held invalid 2 courts now. And that's where we are. So right now, Donald Trump's administration's in federal court arguing to end it. Every part of the ACA, from coverage to pre-existing medical conditions to making sure women aren't charged more for the same exact policy as men, to insurance companies being able to drop you when you get sick like they did in the old days, or put caps on annual benefits or lifetime benefits, and kids can't stay on the policy to 27. We can go through the list. We know it. That's where they are. Here's a quick joke from Colbert from last night on Mike Pompeo and the ever-shifting explanation of the Trump administration over why they killed the Iranian general. Clip number 1, please.
Mike Pompeo. The administration's official explanation is that the strike occurred to thwart an imminent attack. But on Thursday, Pompeo had trouble narrowing that down.
There is no doubt that there were a series of imminent attacks that were being plotted by Qasem Soleimani. We don't know precisely when, and we don't know precisely where, but it was real.
Hello, 911. Hello. Yes, I'm being robbed. I don't know precisely when, and I don't know precisely where, but I do have the address of a guy I want you to kill. This is real. No, hello. Hello.
You know what is great about that clip? When Colbert plays Pompeo speaking before he even gets to his own punchlines, the audience is laughing. That's how laughable the Trump administration's defense of why they killed Soleimani. They killed him for one reason, to help Donald Trump's 2020 reelection. And if American soldiers were killed as a result, he didn't care. And the fact that he created a situation where tensions elevated and we had a Ukrainian airline shot down, we talked about it last night, and 60 Canadians killed and over 170 humans destroyed and killed that day. And while it is obviously the fault lies with the person who made the mistake and shot it down, there's no denying that whatsoever, the entire situation was created by Donald Trump trying to help his reelection campaign. Just like with the Ukraine, just like with Russia. So what's going to happen in a couple of minutes, and I'm start breaking down a little bit of what will happen in next week's Senate trial. And we'll talk about it. We have a lot of time to chat tonight. Congressman Andre Carson is going to join us in a couple of minutes. He's on the House Intel Committee. The House Intel Committee, just minutes ago, Adam Schiff, the chair, sent a letter to Gerald Nadler, chair of House Judiciary, saying, we got this stuff from Lev Parnas. Lev Parnas is Rudy Giuliani's and Trump's BFF, who's indicted for campaign finance violations and trying to get, they weren't indicted for this other reason, but trying to get Marie Yovanovitch fired. I mean, it's all part and parcel of the criminal conspiracy that is Trump. But they got some evidence from their lawyers for Parnas, and now they're sending it, Adam Schiff is sending it to Gerald Nadler, saying, hey, this evidence is pursuant to our impeachment proceedings. It's sensitive, so we can, I'm sure we're not going to hear details from Congressman Carson, who's on House Intel, but he can give us a little sense of exactly what is going on. And they're saying in the letter, a preliminary review of Mr. Parnas' production of documents was laid out here to the committee. There's some relevant information for the impeachment. We'll see how this plays out. What's going to happen on tomorrow? What's expected is Nancy Pelosi will introduce a resolution in the House to choose the House managers. House managers are simply prosecutors. They are the people charged with prosecuting the impeachment of Donald Trump in the Senate. In the case of Bill Clinton, the GOP controlled the House then. They chose 13 House managers. We do not think they will choose 10 or 12 or 13 House managers for this one because all the news around that time, and again today reminding us, it was unwieldy with 13 House managers. We don't know exactly who these will be. There's no doubt Adam Schiff, who has prosecuted impeachments of judges since he's been in the House, will be one of them. Everyone says Gerald Nadler, maybe Hakeem Jeffries, some others. We'll find out. Maybe Jackie Spiro is on TV right now and others. So we'll find that out. And now what will happen is once the resolution is passed appointing the House managers and transmitting the articles of impeachment to the Senate, once they are brought to the Senate, literally the Senate rules say that when they're brought to the Senate, to the bar of the Senate, and they declare, we are ready, it triggers the Senate has to act within 24 hours to begin the entire Senate trial. It's a slower process to start than people might think. And Mitch McConnell today on this, exactly what's going to happen. Here's clip number 2, a little bit of what he expects to happen once he gets the articles.
With regard to impeachment, our understanding is, and I think your understanding is as well, is the House is likely to finally send the articles over to us tomorrow. And we'll be able to, we believe, if that happens, in all likelihood, go through some preliminary steps here this week, which could well include the Chief Justice coming over and swearing in members of the Senate and some other kind of housekeeping measures. We hope to be able to achieve that by consent, which would set us up to begin the actual trial next Tuesday.
And I've got to tell you this, folks, while the House proceedings look like a House committee, when you get to a Senate impeachment trial and you have the Chief Justice there in his robe, and it's much more solemn and serious, it's going to freak Trump out in ways he's not even expecting. because there is a level of gravitas to this that far eclipses what we saw in the House, just because of the nature of where it is and the Chief Justice is there. But right now we have all right, great. So stick around, folks. Right now, very happy to welcome back to this show our friend Congressman Andre Carson, a Democrat from Indiana's 7th Congressional District, serves on the House Intel Committee and the House Committee on Transportation Infrastructure. Congressman Carson, how are you tonight, my friend?
How are you? Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for being on. By the way, I'm rooting for you to be a House manager. Any chance of that?
I did not put in for it this time because of my commitments.
Okay.
I have a lot on my plate right now. So there are plenty other folks who represent quite well. But I appreciate the vote of confidence, man.
I think it'd be so interesting if Speaker Pelosi, just to freak out Fox News, says she's going to appoint the entire squad, Congressman Omar, to leave AOC and Ayanna Pressley, because these are our House managers with Adam Schiff. Good luck, Trump. It would be. She's never going to do that because they're not all lawyers. Rashida is. I'm not sure if Congressman Pressley is or not, but I know Rashida for a while. So let me ask, we just got news from your chair. Adam Schiff just sent a letter a short time ago to Chairman Nadler about the Lev Parnas documents that were produced and by Lev Parnas' lawyer. And everyone knows Lev Parnas, Rudy Giuliani's associate, who was indicted for a campaign finance violation. It also intertwines with everything else because Parnas was trying to get rid of Marie Yovanovitch, the ambassador, and that's why he was funneling money to former Congressman Sessions and others. What can you tell us, obviously that's not confidential or classified, about what was turned over to your committee?
Well, I think that, certainly Adam is following protocol in terms of allowing Chairman Nadler, who is the head of Judiciary, to look at the documents and obviously they're working in coordination. And in terms of the Gang of Eight, they're convening and moving forward with the impeachment documents. I think the greater point to note is that right now we are standing at a crossroads in our country, and these impeachment proceedings, even though Mitch McConnell has stated very explicitly that he wants to shut it down quite rapidly, I think the American people need to see this thing play out. Unlike what we saw with the impeachment proceedings nearly 20 years ago, or just over 20 years ago, this is a very different environment. We deal with politicians almost in real time, if you will. And so I think that as the American people are learning about the political process, not just through the impeachment apparatus, but just through watching more hearings, and we have a president who is tweeting frantically each and every day, it's time for the American people really for us to have a voice, everyday citizens to have a voice, and hopefully say enough is enough. My hope is that those Republican senators will do the right thing and allow witnesses to come in, listen to witness testimonies, listen to the cases being made by the House managers, and make a sound decision based on the overwhelming evidence that President Trump is unfit to serve as our commander-in-chief.
And, you don't need a law degree to understand that a trial is a search for the truth. We all understand that. How can you search for the truth if you're not going to call witnesses who have vital information and the defendant has kept them from testifying and revealing to the public and the jury itself, which are the senators, what these people know? I don't know how it's a trial.
I don't. This is a trial, but it's also quite frankly, it's also a performance of sorts.
Right.
The Democrats really have to leverage this opportunity to make the case before the American people that Donald Trump is unfit, that he used congressionally approved taxpayer dollars to hold over the heads of Ukraine in an attempt to get them to investigate a political rival, i.e. Joe Biden. Not only to add on to his provocations, to add on to the fact that he worked he essentially called on the Russian government to investigate Hillary Clinton or to hack the servers. he has a pattern. And, the great Maya Angelou warned us, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And so I think that the House managers, all very, once they're announced, all very capable, skilled. Pelosi is very wise. She will select people who have persuasive abilities, who will be able to make the case. But I also think she's going to perhaps select a spectrum of folks who represent different political views and different philosophies, all within the Democratic Party infrastructure. Who knows if they will all be attorneys? I'm assuming most will probably be, but those who aren't, I'm sure that they will do a good job in terms of making a case before not only the Senate, but primarily the American people.
Can she pick Jim Jordan and make him prosecute Donald Trump? Is that just for fun? I mean, come on.
Oh,
guess
man.
what? Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, guess where you're going? Devin Nunes, you have to prosecute Donald Trump. Maybe just throw it to Speaker Pelosi. This guy on the radio said this is an idea. So, by the way, I know it's not public yet. Are there any names you're allowed to share, or has it not been determined yet who the House managers would be?
It hasn't been determined yet. But I think it's important, like any other court of law, and you're an attorney. I think it has to have, we must have access to all the evidence and testimony from important and key witnesses. But I think an overwhelming majority of Americans agree and believe that witnesses should be called in the Senate trial, and this doesn't. Not having any witnesses or even documents, I think it essentially equates to a cover-up. Trump's Senate impeachment trial would actually be the first in history to not even have witnesses. And that, to me, is amazing. I think that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle in the Senate, they're simply out of excuses. If they're so concerned about party numbers and internal poll numbers and crosstabs that they're unwilling to be bold, I think that they're still going to lose their constituents. I think they're overestimating Trump's persuasive ability when we're seeing an increasing number of buyer's remorse out there as it relates to his presidency and those who voted for him.
And I'm speaking to Congressman Andre Carson, a Democrat from Indiana, serves on the House Intel Committee. That's a great point. I wrote about it for CNN on Sunday. In the first two presidential impeachment trials, Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, 44 witnesses were called. 44 between the two, including 3 in Clinton that were not called at the House hearing. The first time they were called was in the Senate trial. And, they weren't calling the House hearings. They were part, though. You had Ken Starr's exhaustive report, so it was a little different in his investigation. But to go from 44 witnesses for the first two to 0 for this one, let me ask you, just to make the case that this is not partisan, sincerely, if a Democratic president were to do what Trump did, getting on the phone, asking a foreign leader to interfere to help him win re-election, even though we're Democrats, would you not call that Democratic president out and condemn it and say it's wrong?
Absolutely. My constituents would expect me to do such a thing. I mean, they send me to office. They sent me to office repeatedly because they know me to be bold. I mean, I've had constituents who happen that voted for Trump also vote for me. And I've served under 3 presidents so far, and I've been critical. I think Obama has obviously been the best. But I've been very critical. I mean, I think the founding fathers, as complicated as they were, envisioned a government where you could have that kind of objectivity and be critical, where you had the legislative branch, i.e. Congress, being critical of the executive branch, and the judiciary or the judicial branch being critical of Congress, and so on and so forth. And so we are not living in a monarchy. It's a working democracy. It's certainly an experiment, but I don't want to live in a place where our voices are silenced. We want to be in a place where we can be critical of one another without being totally disagreeable, where we can work together. I think the nature of any true friendship is rooted in having healthy disagreements. So if that's the basis for a healthy friendship, then I think having a healthy government means that we can have disagreements and still move forward as a more perfect union.
And that's the hope, and that's a great sentiment. So let's talk a little for the last few minutes here about Iran. And you had voted for the War Powers Resolution and tweeted that this was an important vote. Why was it so important for you to vote for the War Powers Resolution that just in Congress last week?
Well, Representative Slotkin introduced it. I was proud to have voted for it. War is something not to be taken lightly. It puts so many lives at risk. I have relatives who serve in our military. I come from a military family. And for several decades now, quite frankly, the executive branch has increasingly dragged our country into long, drawn-out military conflicts without the proper consultation with Congress before the fact. But Congress and only Congress has the power to declare war. And last week, President Trump needlessly and recklessly, he essentially escalated an already tense situation with Iran. Mm-hmm. And on Tuesday, I think this resulted on an attack on an American troop station in Iraq, unfortunately. So, members of Congress have serious and urgent concerns about the administration's decision to engage in these kinds of hostilities that we've seen against Iran, and about the lack of strategy coming from the administration moving forward. So, our concerns were not addressed by the president's insufficient, I believe, War Powers Act notification, or by the administration's briefing to Congress last week. It was surface. I felt like, obviously sitting on the Intel committee, we get different briefings, mm-hmm. but I think that the president really, should not place political expediency and reelection before doing what's right. I think that there's space for the president under exigent circumstances to have to make decisions, but this was not one of those instances. I think that the evidence that was presented before the Congress was not persuasive or compelling enough, in my mind and in the mind of my colleagues, to have made such a decision, but we have to move forward. So I don't think we can give President Trump or any other president, quite frankly, a blank check to insert our country and our troops into endless military conflicts. I certainly believe that Iran is a threat, though I have an appreciation for the Iranian people, who many of whom love Americans. But this administration appears to have no coherent strategy to deal with Iran, and even worse, they're moving forward without any cooperation from Congress. So as representatives of the American people, we have a major role to play in foreign policy decisions. And
since Donald Trump, we have evolving answers from this administration over the week. We played the clips. It's almost literally laughable because you have Esper say one thing and the National Security Advisor say something else on another channel. But in the big picture, Donald Trump objectively, this is not subjective, objectively has lied thousands of times. Does it make us less safe as a nation when you have a commander-in-chief like that? Because he might say this and we don't believe it's true, but there might be a real imminent threat in the future and we're still not going to believe him, or it's going to be very hard to convince us because of his track record as a man who does not tell the truth.
That's a great point. There's something to be said about consistency and having a track record, but I think Donald Trump has forever changed the way we view the presidency. Mm-hmm. He has muddied the waters so much with his provocations, with his Islamophobia, with his xenophobia, with his controversy, that confusion has become the order of the day. And as long as he can commit these kinds of acts without approval to stoke fear and anxiety, not only within our own country, but within the global community and some of our strategic partners, then that kind of fear, unfortunately, could lead to his election if we aren't bold, which is why these debates tonight are so important, so the American people can make a sound decision about who we want to be our next commander-in-chief. But if Trump continues to lead by dividing the country through fear and through the threat of global wars, then we're in a bad place, because people typically don't like to switch presidents in the middle of a war.
It's true, and Donald Trump did yesterday again do more anti-Muslim garbage with retweeting that image of Speaker Pelosi in hijab and Chuck Schumer in what looked like a turban, but it's supposed to be some kind of Islamic traditional dress. And
Sure.
this is again pitting people against each other. Last thing, we've talked a lot on the show. People around the country called in and talked about the economy where they live, and it's not matching with the stock market record breaking. You're in Indiana. What do you see in your district in that area in terms of the economy?
We've seen, every year we host a job fair. We host two job fairs, one for adults, the other for young people, I guess it would be 20, 22 and under. And we've seen our unemployment numbers decrease. Our unemployment average is on par with the national average. Our numbers are on par with the national average. So we work with the mayor's office. We often work with the state and the governor's office. The governor happens to be Republican. We have a good working relationship, but jobs are still critical. The healthcare sector is huge, particularly in my district, where Eli Lilly, one of the largest drug manufacturers, they're headquartered there. We have Anthem. We have a series of hospitals there, and so on and so forth. But we have a growing tech sector as well. Jobs are critically important. I meet with organized labor quite regularly, and they're trying to come up with ways in the midst of the discussion about automation, in the midst of discussion about shifting industries, how to take this very trained and capable workforce and use those skills for additional training. And for us, it's about having those investments, attracting more businesses. I mean, we're the second largest city in the Midwest. Chicago's number one. And so Indianapolis is a critical player with the crossroads of America. More people are moving into the greater Indianapolis area, and I hope that will create more jobs. Salesforce just bought a tower. They're based out of San Francisco. They're in the district now. And so we're seeing a lot of growth, but more can be done, which is why we're working with employers along with the mayor and the governor to ensure that Hoosiers have good jobs.
Well, thank you, Congressman. Thanks for spending time with us. I appreciate it. And
are you kidding me?
it's great to chat with you. And hopefully I'm coming to D.C. in the not-too-distant future to go to the Hill to talk to members, and we'll reach out. I'd love to see you in person like we did. I think last year we went to your offices and did it. It'd be great to chat with you again in person, my friend.
Absolutely, man. Get you ready for your Senate race, man. Let's do it.
That's right. All right, Congressman. Nice chatting with you. Take care.
You too.
Folks, let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll take calls right to the top of the hour right here on the Dean Obeidallah Show.
Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress 127. You've heard Dean's thoughts. Now it's your turn. 866-99-SIRIUS. 866-997-4748. This is the Dean Obadala Show
on Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're live Tuesday, January 14th. And we have tonight till 7:30 to have calls. And so I'll talk for a few more minutes, and we'll go to the calls. Then John Delaney, 2020 candidate in Iowa, calling live from Iowa. And Danny Savalas will be in the third hour, MSNBC legal analyst, to break down the rules of what a Senate trial is going to look like based on the Clinton rules. They could change it, but it seems Mitch McConnell is very tethered to those rules, wants to support them and employ them in this trial. So I think they really do give us some instructions what we're going to see the ultimate rules passed. Mitch McConnell did say something today that's got to upset Donald Trump. Mitch McConnell was asked, would you dismiss the case before a trial the way Donald Trump wants? And here's clip number 3, Mitch McConnell on this issue.
The president has suggested that you should just move to dismiss. You clearly want to get this over sooner rather than later. Why not push to try and dismiss?
Yeah, there is little or no sentiment in the Republican conference for a motion to dismiss. Our members feel that we have an obligation to listen to the arguments, and we've laid out in this resolution an opportunity for everybody to sit there. Remember, senators can't say anything, so they'll have to sit there and listen. To listen carefully to the arguments by both the prosecution and the defense, to follow that up with written questions submitted through the Chief Justice. And that means listening to the case, not dismissing the case.
And he touched on sort of the procedure there. This is going to look vastly different than what you saw in the House. It's not going to be like in the House with a bunch of members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans, sitting there and a witness comes in and they pepper that person with questions. It's not. The senators can't ask questions. You just heard Mitch McConnell say that. They sit there like a jury, a partisan jury, but still a jury. They listen to the House managers and Trump's attorneys, whoever he picks to represent him, in this trial, battle it out. And what will happen is the first thing is there's going to be the oath given by the Chief Justice. That's why I'm telling you, the gravity of this is so much more impressive and serious and solemn than what you saw in the House. It's going to look like a trial, even though not exactly, but it's going to feel like a trial. It's going to concern Trump. I think it's going to re-engage the American people because it does not look like anything they've seen in 20 years. All of a sudden, they see the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court sitting there at the front presiding and people taking this seriously. And it's not going to be like the Jim Jordans and the Mark Meadows and Devin Nunes is saying ridiculous things. This is much more sober and somber, and I think it's going to have an impact on public opinion. So first thing, I'll just go through these really quickly, and me and Danny, when Danny comes on, we'll talk about it much more if you want to hear the in-depth, deep dive on what we're going to see. It starts with the oath. As soon as the House managers send the articles over, which we expect a vote tomorrow, the senators then start their first thing they do in their procedure. Once they get the articles, they take the oath. Then they vote on the rules, which they'll debate back and forth. With Bill Clinton's trial, they voted on 2 sets of rules. One was the first set of rules setting up opening statements and trial briefs. And then after that, then they voted on allowing witnesses. So what'll probably happen if they follow these rules, there'll be a debate over some rules. At that point, there might be an argument, and it seems some Republican senators want a commitment to witnesses. We'll see how that plays out. But again, if you follow what happened in Clinton, after this early energy and excitement, they're going to say, okay, both sides go write your trial briefs. And what they did in Clinton, they stopped for about a week, 6 days. Everyone just went to their sides for 6 days. There was no trial going on. And the House managers wrote their legal briefs and the president's lawyers, Clinton's lawyers, wrote their briefs. And then they came back. And then from there, the arguments over days, they gave each side 24 hours to make their arguments through the House managers and Clinton's lawyers. And then the senators get to ask questions, but in writing. They write them down, like in class, and you hand them up, and you give it to the Chief Justice, John Roberts, who will answer the questions. After all of that, that's when Mitch McConnell is saying they'll have a discussion on should witnesses be allowed or not. That's when it happened in Clinton. And that's when they voted for 3 witnesses to be deposed. It was Monica Lewinsky and 2 other people who were not seen at the House trial, but they were interviewed and deposed by Kenneth Starr in his several-year adventure he did there. But then if it goes forward from there, they hear the witnesses, then there's deliberations by the Senate. The deliberations are done behind closed doors, and then they have to vote in public afterwards. And the real question is going to be the witnesses. And here's Mitch McConnell today asked point blank, is it a trial if you don't have witnesses? And listen to Mitch McConnell. Doesn't answer it directly because that's not what Republicans do. What did he do? Does a whataboutism. What about the House Democrats? Here you go. Listen, this is ready for Fox News. He'll say it tonight on Fox News, I'm sure. Clip number 4.
Can there be a fair trial if there are no witnesses?
Well, if you look at the House product, you really got to wonder what the definition of a fair trial is. They did almost nothing that you would expect the House to do in order to set up this case to be considered by the Senate. And with regard to what witnesses are necessary, we're going to vote on that at the appropriate time after we listen to the arguments.
And would the White House be able to block those witnesses?
51 senators will decide who to call. After that, who knows who will employ what kind of legal devices? I have no idea. So, in spite of your very best efforts to fast forward this to that moment, we can't go there yet. So we'll just have to wait and see what the feeling of the Senate is after listening to the arguments and the period of written questions.
So he gave us a whataboutism. The reality is the House does impeachment. They have the sole power of impeachment. Impeachment is a fact finding. It's not a trial. And if someone's impeached, it's like they're indicted. And then the Constitution says the Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. It does not say the House has the power to try impeachments because there's no trial in the House. It's just gathering facts and writing articles of impeachment. Again, the Constitution says very clearly the Senate shall have the power to try all impeachments. You don't need a law degree to understand an impeachment is a trial is the search for the truth. That's what trials do. You try to find out the truth. Doesn't matter what trial. It could be municipal court, night court. It could be people's court. It could be Judge Judy. And it could be in the United States Senate with the President of the United States on trial. You cannot have a trial without witnesses that you've not heard from who the defendant, Donald Trump, has blocked from testifying. That's not a trial. That's a cover-up. That's a charade. That's a Joseph Stalin, Soviet Union type show trial. That's done for the public consumption, not to find the reality. And 70% of Americans in poll after poll say they want witnesses at this trial because we all understand what a trial is. For right or for wrong, thanks to TV dramas and Judge Judy and People's Court and everything else, we've all seen it. And to have no witnesses allowed, cover up. And I think that could hurt the Republicans. I'm not sure because their base might be happy with it. It's hard to say at this point. But arguments by Mitch McConnell, or worse, Marco Rubio, who said, point blank, the evidence gathered to date by the House should be the only evidence the Senate considers, is ridiculous. That's not based in any reality. That's Marco Rubio leading another wing of the pro-Trump part of the Senate there, and Trump wanting an outright dismissal. Do you know who doesn't want witnesses with vital information to testify? People afraid of what those witnesses are going to say, because they're going to say things that are really bad for you. It's common sense. If you're on trial and if there's a witness that's going to testify to help you, you will do everything you can to make sure that witness testifies. If, however, you are Donald Trump and you know John Bolton or Mick Mulvaney, the OMB director, or John Eisenberg, the National Security Council lawyer, who John Bolton said to Fiona Hill, go tell him we're not part of the drug deal. And Lieutenant Colonel Vindman went to John Eisenberg as well. Trump won't let any of them testify. This is a charade. And I think the structure that the framers put together, they never envisioned a Donald Trump who would block everything. So, and just to sum up quickly here, we've had 2 presidential impeachment trials in the Senate, 2. Between the 2, how many witnesses testified? 44. 44 witnesses between the 2. And Trump and McConnell want 0. 44-0. That's outrageous. In the Clinton trial, they had 3. And that's even after Ken Starr did an investigation for literally 4 years, deposed every single person. Bill Clinton did not stop anybody. In fact, he even deposed Bill Clinton under oath in a videotaped deposition. got everyone. Trump stopped everyone. He would not even go to Robert Mueller. And in this case, we didn't have a special counsel. We should have had a special counsel just on the Ukraine, but that would have dragged this out for another 2 years. So the House moved much more quickly. And, as the Democrats have pointed out, I think it's so important they remind the American people over and over, the reason they don't have John Bolton's testimony, the reason Mick Mulvaney, and they don't have John Eisenberg and others, is that Trump either stopped them or made clear he would stop them if they were called by executive privilege and objections. That's why Donald Trump is charged with one article of impeachment for obstruction of Congress. It's because he directed, according to the article of impeachment I'm reading, key witnesses not to comply with subpoenas. And how could you find out if the article of impeachment, which says Donald Trump solicited the interference of a foreign government, Ukraine, in the 2020 United States presidential election in pursuit of personal political benefit? How could you know if that's true or not without these key witnesses? It is impossible. I think we know enough. I think Trump should be convicted and removed. But you're making this case to the American people who may not have paid attention. And these are key witnesses. And by the way, Rubio's comment, which other senators are going to echo, only what the House gets. That's the only thing that we should consider. That is made up. In fact, other impeachment proceedings before this one have had witnesses, numerous, who were never called by the House. Again, with Bill Clinton's impeachment, all three witnesses were not called by the House before it got to the Senate. And in various judges, there was the three most recent federal judges who were impeached and removed, because no president's been removed, but judges have. In 1986, 21 witnesses called in the trial of Harry Claiborne. In the trial of Alcee Hastings, 55 witnesses were called. And in the most recent one in 2010, Senator Thomas Porteous, there were not only numerous witnesses, 17 at his trial were not called in the House. So there were 17 brand new witnesses called in this trial. And by the way, guess who prosecuted Judge Porteous? Adam Schiff. He was sent over as House manager, one of the key House managers. So, and I just want to point out one thing, and I know this gets a little deep in the weeds here, but there is a basis in the Senate impeachment rules that were enacted in 1986, and they're still controlling. There is one provision, Section 11, which says, point blank, the Senate shall have the power to appoint a committee of senators to receive evidence and take testimony at such times and places that the committee may determine, close quotes. So the very rules contemplate the Senate going beyond the scope of the evidence given to them by the House and doing their own investigation, because they are charged by our Constitution to try the impeachment. A trial is a search for the truth. You cannot know the truth if you do not want to hear from key witnesses. What you're doing is covering things up for Donald Trump. That's all this is about. And it's needed even more to have this. I mean, this process has been tainted. Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell already saying point blank, we're not impartial. We're biased. I'll talk about this later with Danny. I don't know how they take their oath, which says you have to swear that you're going to be impartial. These guys already said they're not impartial. I have a question. Is this lying to Congress? It's not perjury because it's they're swearing. So are they making a false oath, which would be lying to Congress under Section 1001, 18 U.S.C. Code 1001, which is sort of a catch-all for lying to Congress. I don't know how they're not lying to Congress. They both said point blank, we're not impartial. Now they're going to take an oath saying we are impartial. I'm not joking around. How do they do that? As a lawyer, I don't see a way unless they renounce what they said before and say, we were wrong. We are now going to be impartial. And now we'll take the oath. If you don't do that, you already told us you won't be impartial. Then you'll put your hand up and take an oath that you will be impartial. You've lied. You've lied to Congress. And to me, that's a crime. So they should either disqualify themselves or renounce their lack of impartiality, even though it's wink, wink, I know it, or commit a crime. It's their choice. This is where we are. Can you have a trial without witnesses that vital information? That's what I leave for you. You, my friends, tonight, you're the jury here in deciding what we should be pushing for. What do you want the Democrats to push for going forward in this? Because there's going to be like a really earnest, good debate on what the rules should be. 866-997-4748. Let me ask you, if they do the cover-up, say they listen to the opening statements and then dismiss the case with no witnesses, which is a pretty decent shot they might do that, because that's what Trump wants, that's what McConnell wants. Do you think that hurts the Republicans in the purple states, not in the very red states, like the Cory Gardners in Colorado, Tom Tillis maybe in North Carolina, Susan Collins, of course, in Maine? Does it hurt them? Is there a concern for them? I don't think in the ruby red states it means anything, to be blunt, but the other states. So 866-997-4748. And if I don't get to you at the top of the hour, don't go anywhere, because we have right till 7:30 to take calls. So I'll be right back with you as my guest right after this break.
Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.